Hey guys, welcome to my channel. It's Sarah Upside Down here. If you haven't been here before, I do content for autism, ADHD, learning disabilities, and some mental health. Today's video is going to be, it was a requested video, and it's about being late identified or late diagnosed. And I don't do that to separate those two or anything. It's just some people actually don't figure it out. They're told, and some people do later in life. So that's just what I mean by that. I feel like it's kind of like sneezing, and like people kind of get afraid because you're sneezing but you don't have corona. It's not really funny, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like I have to state those facts in there. Anyways, so more of the impacts of not finding out until later, not being identified or identifying uh, with any of that stuff until later, just not knowing about it. And you've definitely known all the things about yourself. You just didn't know that it was actually related to something. Or, you go later because you feel like some things are going on, and, you end up getting a diagnosis for autism, and you're kind of like, what is that? Because I actually have seen it from both sides and still similar feelings, I guess, or emotions with that. And by the way, I actually did a 30-minute video, and then my brand new phone, this lovely Android here, just blooped, and like my whole thing disappeared. So I had a moment for a second. And that's why I'm on live again, because I'm like, ooh, I could try to record again, but I'm not going to do that because it could also do the same thing and I'll get a headache from that. So that's why I'm live. But hello, feel free to comment on the video while it's going, and I'll do my best to look at your comments and communicate with you guys with that. So a lot of us know that if we have late identified or been late diagnosed and so on, that there's, I guess, some repercussions from that. Like, we didn't know a lot of things, and so we just had to sort of try to navigate it ourselves throughout our lives. Or, maybe our parents didn't know what that was when we were growing up. They just assumed, that's just how we were. And so, they may have even tried to accept some stuff or try to help us, but they weren't given guidance. I feel like both of those kind of pertain to me, like, and my upbringing in a way, like, and probably some others. They're just like, okay, they're just doing some of these things that are odd or whatever. Okay, yeah, that's just Sarah. So she's just weird, so we'll just let her be that way. Hey, how's it going? But yeah, I'll hop right into it. I actually took some information from one of my other special interests, which is the MBTI stuff. And one of the girls that I watch on YouTube by the way, like, the amount of hours that I spend on YouTube is a little obsessive, I will have to admit. But her information on how she felt, because I'm an INTJ type, and how she felt with these questions and her type. Her name is Lindsay, and she does videos for INTJ and other typology stuff, but specifically for that personality. So go check out her channel if you're interested in some of that. And just wanted to make sure I'm putting her stuff out there, because that's where I got some of the things that related with the topic today. And it really helped me to put it better into perspective, because I have a hard time getting started with things. Once I do, I'm good. And also, I can just continue drinking this Earl Grey like I do every time, and it'll keep my brain going. So anyways, so I would say for me, like, having chaotic environments and not being understood as to why I needed more structure, probably being seen in those ways as needy, rude, bossy, and a control freak, versus needing it to function and succeed. I think it is very confused on what executive functioning is. Maybe I'll do a whole video about that. But it's not just about, like, someone who can't organize. No, I'm all the way on the organizing and structure and things being in a certain like way. But whenever I'm having executive functioning issues, I will be more flustered on those things. So I would say like the reactions that I had as a child and growing up and a teenager and stuff were probably less controlled, and sometimes they're still not. Maybe more explosive, and just would have meltdowns over some of those things. But it was also because like those were some of the needs that I had, and I would organize and set up things myself. And I've talked about my room before a couple times, but I like collected a bunch of Asia, Japanese, all kinds of like artifacts and stuff. And like I had it all set up. Like it was in a line. There was a lot of structure. I didn't have toys all over. Like my room was like an adult's. Okay. But I would still have my childlike things. It's just I actually needed that. And I think I was like smart enough to know I needed that, but it also was just like, this is naturally how I do things. But I think that my reactions to not having those things were completely misunderstood, like on a high level of just not understood. And probably not having some of that in school settings and whatever, like I just didn't really succeed and excel in most of those areas. I do have friends that like I think they maybe had a little bit more structure at home, and so they were able to focus more on school, or they didn't focus more on the social aspects, and so all their energy went into the school and succeeding and stuff. I just sort of like flunked in all areas besides organizing, and that was it. So, but Lijo Lindsay on her channel actually had some really great questions that I think it helps in the autism community as well. Hey, Mr. Mark, it's good to see you on here again. I kind of honestly like doing the live videos a little bit because the interaction is good, and y'all can actually ask questions while I'm doing it. But yeah, so back to where did I go? ADHD. Oh. But yeah, so her first question was, what was your greatest challenge as a kid? And I think like looking back to like some of the challenges and stuff that we had as a kid kind of makes it make sense to when we're an adult. And some of those challenges are still there if we didn't get it quite figured out along the way or have any help with that because we didn't know we were autistic. And I'm not saying like all autistics that get diagnosed or know early in their life wouldn't go through some of these struggles as well. For all I know, their parents found out, and just it could be the same. But this is mostly speaking on just figuring out later in life and the impacts of that. But the answer there on what was your greatest challenge, being misunderstood and understanding other humans. And she said at a very young age, not being understood very well, and in order to survive in the world, get by, succeed, and do things with other humans, that she had to play human better. I had to watch what they do and how they do things in order to act where I could be somewhat understood. I mean, like that hits pretty hard. Yeah, I get misunderstood a lot. Yeah, I pretty much live in that. I don't think I really help help it either these days. I think like I've clinged on to a lot of stuff about myself that now I'm just kind of like, it's just always going to be that way. Not in a negative sense, but it's just sort of like, well, I understand now, so I guess that helps. I don't think I understood myself and being autistic whenever I was younger, and I'm still an autistic adult. And so at least I have that understanding of me now, whether someone else does or not. So I think it like helps that self-esteem that I like totally didn't have. Yes. But yeah, basically learning how to human better to get by in life. She said that she noticed just being her, obviously, she didn't see the results. It was working. It wasn't working. It wasn't optimal on how to get by in life. At a very young age, I was looking and pinging and learning to modify my behavior so that I could generate certain results in my life, and it was still such a challenge because I had to learn how to do things that are really liked in reality, but I was not good at that. Trying to know what people like and how to mimic their behavior was awkward and not very good. It was like acting and being in a culture that wasn't really mine. Big challenge. It was a big challenge, but it became accepting of it, realizing that this is how it is and that this is how you get by in life. Yes, I have notes. I think I could try to do this on notes, but we'd be here for like 2 hours, and I don't know if I'd get anywhere. So that would be a waste of time. Um, but yeah, she said, this is how I worked to get XYZ results in life. And that like hit me hard, even not in just my personality, but like with being autistic. And I think that that kind of speaks to, maybe you guys and a lot of other people on the spectrum out there, because definitely misunderstood, but it's more than that. It's that, even her with like her personality type, and I don't know if, she's on the spectrum or not or whatever, but just with that information, that is exactly how I felt. And that is actually what led into masking, and I mean, I see that in boys and men too. Like my son shows a lot of what would be said as autistic female traits when because they don't think, a lot of people don't think that men mask as well. And I see that in my household, and I'm like telling you, it's a thing. Because they want to figure it out too. And so it's not that we're like not trying to see their side. We're not trying to understand. That's how a lot of us get into masking. So later on in life, when we figure out, not until like late ages, that we're autistic, and that it wasn't like that other people actually they just people, and everything's natural. And for the most part, I mean, there might be like social anxiety and things like that, but like it's not like they're having to completely figure it all out in order to like get into one group. I think what I did is I was just always in the like 3 high schools that I went to, and how many ever junior highs, and I just went to a lot of different schools. It was the same in every, if I found it too much energy or too frustrating to like fit in with the certain crowd, then I would end up just like in the crowd where like none of us fit in, and we're just all going to be in the same circle, because then maybe my quirks and things won't be like, you know, as high. So I think that was my way of like trying to get around the social things. It's just like, okay, the popular group will accept me for like a good second, and then it's going to be hard to hide some of those things. And then like, okay, so that worked for a good second. That's too much work. They're telling me to be friends with. Okay, I'm going to go over here. This will be a little bit easier. And I think me moving and learning to adapt from school to school to school is like different environments and still chaotic. But I would say on the positive note of like not knowing I was autistic until later was that I learned to adapt. And I think that some of my friends that may be autistic and homeschooled, or like they were actually able to thrive more, in their environments without worrying so much about all the stuff that's, all this everything around them. I think that, they are like still similar to how they were, as like teenagers as they are as adults, in a lot of ways. So they didn't change, like not saying in a bad way, but they liked what they liked, they did what they did, and they had their small group of friends, and then they, kept that for most of their lives. And then, when they got older, they kind of still, that's who they, were friends with and stuff. And then, it's just not so complicated. They didn't have to continuously adapt. So I think, was a lot less stressful, maybe in that aspect. I don't know. I don't even know what I said the whole first 30 minutes that my video messed up. I'm just doing this all over again. It's probably completely different. But yeah, so her second question was, definitely has been a, yeah, I'll have to get more into that like in a second, because I was trying to remember when I answered some of that on the last time I was trying to do this. But there's definitely, besides the process of like not masking anymore, there's also a lot of identity related stuff in that that I had to go through as well. And yeah, it's definitely a process that does not need to be rushed. That's for sure. What did you find most troubling? Was the other question that she had. And the answer was, I didn't understand why other kids were mean and why I wasn't accepted in certain capacities. I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand how all the components work together. And as a child, I couldn't understand why other kids were being mean. And it wasn't that I was mad necessarily, but I just couldn't understand. Wanted to understand if it was something that I did. Is there something wrong? And I could not wrap my brain around it. Figured out later more why things happened and wanted to understand more why they were doing things in a certain way. And not necessarily that I was always wanting to join in on their fun, but I wanted to understand what they were doing before I joined in. And, kids just didn't want to do that. They just wanted to play. So that was kind of like her thoughts on that. Hey, KK, good to see you here again. Yeah, and I'm just sitting here like, does that make you speechless? For me, it totally makes me speechless. I'm just over here like, yes, that's all I have to say is yes. That, no words. Because of how much I connect with that. It's like, I like live in my brain, and although I may say stuff on the outside a lot, it's just probably just sometimes not actually saying anything that's really going on. But with her just like trying to understand people, like trying to be like why they have to be mean, that was me. I was just watching from the outside. Like, I didn't understand why people had to bully, like what their point was behind that. Is there an objective here? Like, is there something that you're getting from this? I mean, why do we need to do that? But then on another note, like if kids just wanted to play and they just wanted to, have a good time and whatever, I'm over here like trying to understand why they're trying to play this and why they're trying to do this. And like, they just want to do it. They just want to do the thing, and I'm like trying to just get my head around that stuff. So yes, that was just a lot of gibberish just then, but you know what I'm saying? Just couldn't just go and play and do and whatever for me anyways. I wanted to understand, like, not how necessarily to fit in, but why you had to, or like, what's the point? What's the point here? Why can't we all just be our individual selves and, use our own brains? Like, why do we all have to copy everything that everybody else is doing? That sounds kind of boring. So, and then another question is, when did I feel most at peace in an environment without chaos? And my answer to that was exploring, being under a willow tree. That was one of my favorite things. And being able to enjoy the environment, being in my head and dancing when others could not hear the music. That's as poetic as I'll get today. But really though, like I felt content in here, like with this imagination, like stuff that was in here, and not necessarily having to always do what everybody else did, always having to, interact how everyone else was like. And not saying that I didn't want to be social, like I did. I think that people have like the wrong idea about autistics with that stuff. It's not that we don't want to, it's that it's stressful. Like I don't socialize the same way. Get with the program, you know. Uh, Shut my notes here. But yeah, I didn't socialize in the same way as everybody else. That doesn't mean that we just don't want to socialize or we don't want to have that. Whenever I meet another autistic and we're like in the same room and we have a similar interest, I mean, say goodbye to the real world, because this is about to go down to Fun Town. I mean, we just get lost in that conversation. We're just sucking in all the details. We're just diving, and then like I can speak for a good like 15 minutes and then they can. I mean, it's a different type of reciprocation. It's still happening, just not the same. So, but I have realized that whenever I hang out with someone else that's, similarly wired, that the relationship and the friendship is understood better. And so I don't feel completely rejected already. I think that's also part of my ADHD and having like rejection dysphoria and stuff like that. But I don't just immediately feel like I don't belong or fit in or whatever. And going back to like that being later on in life, well, I do not even want to mention the amount of things and friendships and relationships and bridges that were burned partly because of me too. Yes, I'm also guilty. But it's also because I didn't know I was autistic. I was just like, when you try to figure out like why they need to have small talk, why you need to have this back and forth conversation, why can't we can't just sit in our own worlds and be together and like have a relationship and not really talk, like, you know. And so yeah, like I think I've had a lot of interpersonal relationship issues because of not knowing about me being autistic until I'm almost 30. Like I identified whenever I was 27 and wasn't diagnosed until 29. I mean, and even through that time, as far as the question was asked on like, other people not believing you and stuff like that, yeah, I feel like I needed to really have some validation in that area. And I don't always want that, but this was pretty important for my identity when we go into talking about identity, because you get thrown all kinds of words your entire life. Weirdo, freak, you're being odd, you're doing this, you can't get along with the rest of the kids. I don't know, whatever other label, nerd, all those, you want to be able to choose for yourself. And then when other people are not really believing you, or they need to have this information, or they want you to have this diagnosis or whatever to back it up, it's like, I've done like 2 years worth of research before I got diagnosed, and that still isn't, valid. And just to let you know, even after my diagnosis, I don't think it was that much more, So I do understand the importance of self-identifying in those ways, and that I even went through that myself. And what it came down to for me, and what I had to talk a lot in cognitive therapy and stuff about, was that that I knew that myself, and that whether my family accepted that or not, which I think they definitely do now. I mean, the whole stuff is pretty much out, so here it is. Like, they can't really deny it now, but I think even my own family, like different family members, were talking about how I was like hypochondriac and different things like that. Yet it's funny when people say that, but they're actually not doing any research on their own. So yeah. But I just had to keep on pushing that out, like pushing that out, pushing that out, pushing that out, boundaries, boundaries, some more boundaries, because I knew the things for the fact, and I knew this explained like a lot of the misunderstanding growing up, a lot of the problems that I had, or reasons why I got into things, or in trouble, or times that I listened to people that I shouldn't, like not knowing intentions of others, like all these things that I now know that I don't have to keep doing. So the joke's on them. Okay, that's not a very like mature way to put it. I'm just saying that um, for me, it's still beneficial for me to know whether they believe that part of my identity or my diagnosis or anything else, because I've gained a lot of tools and a giant bag of things that I can use. Um, and I don't, I don't have to be validated for that. And it still helps with my life now. And it's a lot less common for a girl to be, I would say like my brother would have definitely been diagnosed first because he's like, the stereotype, but even he didn't. But that's also because of, I think, other factors. We grew up more low income, I think. And even though we went to certain places or counseling or different things like that, they didn't maybe have education even themselves back then, or the type of places we were going to. And so even someone that is like the 100% stereotype, if they couldn't, they definitely weren't going to make it to me, and if you're functioning better in their eyes and stuff like that, I think that it's a little more difficult. Or if you are, and that's why functioning labels, I just throw those out, are frustrating. And a lot of times the boys in the family will get diagnosed and the girls won't. I think that's usually how it goes, typically. But I think that if if you're like way older than them and education wasn't known about, you know, or in your area, I mean, there's a lot of factors, but for the most part, I think that they don't see the girl as being like the boy, or even in my case, it was the other way around. Actually, my daughter got the diagnosis first. I won't talk too much into them, because I'm not ready to do that yet, but it was very frustrating going through the process with my son, and just them not, seeing, I guess, what I do and, what I know about autism, and that it's just not as stereotypical as some places want it to be. I guess that would make it easier. But something that's still worth pursuing, if you need or have, certain needs that it would provide, like college and things like that. I think, some are, of course, fine with the self-identifying thing, but I think later on, especially if you've gone through some of the stuff that I did with school, like I had learning disabilities, the ADHD as well. I had reading comprehension issues. I'm not a math genius, and I probably would have done a lot better if I, was taught differently or was in some of the special needs classes, to be honest. But so for me, having that, it actually will provide me having more help and assistance whenever I choose to go back to school and stuff like that. So while some they may not need it for all that, or they actually end up doing fine, like having a career, they like actually still was able to do some of those things. For me and for some others, that was not, and school was just he double. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I needed that for me to still get help and things in other areas. And yeah. So I know like a lot of people like think that it's not important to do or whatever, but if you do have some of those specific needs and whatever, then it may actually prove helpful to do so. That's just my opinion. That's just an opinion. But yeah, there is more negatives than positives about getting diagnosed or self-identifying later in life, I would say. But overall, I would say the positive is for me, besides being a little more adaptable to environments and stuff, because I just didn't know how to figure it out anyways, is that I would not be the mom that I am today. I know that for a fact. Uh, I would probably honestly have just, known forever, known about it, been fine with that. Like I might have, gotten more help in different things in school, which would have been great, and I wouldn't have fallen through the cracks and da 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 da. But the way I look at it is that that's a past. I'm already detached from that kind of, and it sort of blows. But I don't think I would be as present in figuring out some of this stuff for my kids, because it would have just been something I already know, I've already dealt with. I've like haven't figured it all out. And I'm not saying that'd be for everybody. This is just my personality. I think it's part of my personality that I would have sort of known about these things. And so I just wouldn't have seen it in them as much. I would have just, maybe help them how I already thought, or for all I know, I wouldn't have had them. I don't know. So, with it being so present in me, because I was going through it, because I was figuring it out, some of the reasons why I was figuring it out is because I was going through the process with them as well. I mean, that sounds chaotic and miserable and horrible, but that was, I felt like, meant to happen too. I don't know, because then that way I would be able to have it fresh in my mind, know what's going on with me, and know actually how to help them better, and also to figure out stuff with the school. And when that wasn't working out, like I would still keep going. I would still keep doing stuff for them. I wouldn't give up. I would make sure that they are going to be provided with what they need. And what I'm saying is why I wouldn't be like that, because if I was already provided with all those needs, I would have just already had them. I wouldn't know what it's like to not have that, in order to push and push and push for them to go through the process and for them to get what they need in order to succeed. I don't know, that rhymed. But really, I wouldn't have it probably wouldn't cross my mind as much. So yes, it all kind of blows about not. But I would say, for me personally, there is those whole two things that makes it worth it. And I guess I will agree to one saying, which is better late than never. Because, oh, thank goodness, I do not know what I would have done if I would have waited even longer, or not waited, I would say, like, if I just didn't know even longer and had to go through all the way through parenthood and stuff with just the sensory issues and all that kind of stuff. So I am glad that I figured it out when I did, but I don't think that I have the resentments and regret of not, you know what I'm saying? So anyways, yeah, homework and over what math. Yeah. I walked out of the classroom. I think I even set myself in the front of the class. This is like me trying, set myself in front of the math class, and then I was still like listening to the cricket on the ground and looking out the window, and like it wasn't even just like the ADHD side of things. It was more of like I'm hearing sounds here, over here, over here, over there, whatever, and all these sounds that were then making me not have attention. See, there's a process to it. It's not always what it seems. And so I just remember being called on in that moment, and I looked up and just like, deer, what is that? Deer in the headlights, whatever. Just ran out of the classroom. Just ran right out of the classroom, just and just freaked out because I was like, I have no idea. Like I even tried to sit in front of the classroom. So yeah, I definitely remember being in that situation a lot with like math class, and I'm pretty sure I had like dyscalculia. I don't know. I still have to count on my fingers. So that whole stereotype of like autistics being math geniuses. Yes, I do know some. They are my brother, not me. Yeah, we can go into like the the history and the philosophical side over there. Yes. And then back about the comment, I'll answer this real quick about the masks and the relationship to them and stuff like that. So there's also, this whole thing about, and I know it happens with females a lot, especially in the US, about being misdiagnosed with different personality stuff. And, that's why I like also look into typology and personality and things like that. It's very possible to have, autism and personality issues. I don't really like to say disorder. Like, I don't think it's autism disorder or, yes, it's somewhat of a disorder of the personality. But you mask for so long and stuff, you accumulate a different personality. You have to dig under to find who you actually were before. So if you accumulate some mental health and things along the way, I mean, I got anxiety, OCD, like ADHD along with it. And a lot of those comorbidities, as far as the anxiety and stuff happened, they got worse because of not knowing about being autistic. So that kind of goes back to that, because I didn't know how to cope. You don't have these coping things. You can't emotionally regulate. That will turn into something else if you don't figure it out. I don't know why I just did that in a song. Don't judge me. I'm just saying, like, I'm totally fine with knowing that about myself, but that doesn't completely throw out the fact that I'm autistic as well. We have to find that autistic identity and why we needed to wear these masks and stuff and go through a process of taking them off. I was over here just like let me take them all off at the same time, and the whole world was not ready for that, and it turns out I wasn't either. And I kind of mentioned that in my masking video, because I just took off all these identities, personas, whatever, that like I accumulated trying to be even like a fourth accepted by society or whatever. So yeah, I would just say that not doing that so fast, and that and not being ashamed, or also the other way of that, which is in denial, that you maybe wouldn't have accumulated some mental health stuff. Now, of course, they do try to completely cover up the autism with it just being that, and that's when I think it's kind of a problem, because then you're still not getting the help you need in those other areas. But my opinion is just not highly unlikely. I have issues with emotional regulation. My meltdowns, are not fun. and I can, I still have to put myself in timeout and can have adult tantrums, if I don't catch things and try to work on regulating that. If you go your entire life, 30, 40, whatever plus years, not coping and not having tools or cognitive behavioral therapy, DBT, whatever else for those side of the autism things, then, like it doesn't regress, it progresses. And those are not the type of progressions that I want to like stack on myself, but it happens sometimes, and that's okay. So that's just my thoughts on that area of things. I hope this video helped today, and I hope that some of you can see, like, some of the positive things in that. I am not a super optimist. Do not get that idea. I'm not at all. But I do try to see that perspective, so that I'm not just like, totally crushed with, my entire past of probably not going in some of the right directions. So, anyways, feel free to follow me on my other social medias. I have Facebook that you can search. I'm the eccentric autistic. Surprise. And you can message me through there. So if you message more and stuff like that on some of these topics, then you can message me through Facebook on there. Yes, I wish I had a patient grandmother. I don't think I was surrounded by anybody that was very patient, and I'm pretty sure like 2 out of the 4 or whatever parents that I had were probably also autistic and didn't know it. And then I actually have a lot of family members that are, and even though they did, still less patience. So I'm actually working on my patience myself and trying to remember when doing homework how irritated my parents were with me, and that I just had such a hard time with it, or like learning how the school taught it, that yeah, and I'm trying not to be that way with my kids. So I really try to remember those things so that I can have some sort of empathy towards that situation versus me being impatient. Like, I'm not perfect either, so like I have to recognize some of those things as a parent, and not just go walking around all day like She-Hulk, just needing everybody to like organize everything and stay in line. So, we all have our things. But anyways, hope you all have a good day. Contact me on the other things, and or we could just, talk about other fun and nerdy things and not serious too. So